is up, fantasy fans? As always, I'm Shay from the channel Zachary Shay, narrator of The Gallant by Janny Wirtz and author of forthcoming fantasy novel Requiem Dreams of the Sleepless. And today I'm going to talk about my favorite book of the year so far. It's not a new release. I read it this year. I've read other works by this author, but this work just took an author that I already held in a really high regard in terms of their craft and their storytelling ability and their prose and their dialogue, and it elevated every single element, even though this came out earlier than the books by this author that I have already read, and that is Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. But it will be harder for you if you remember. Love is always harder. Love means weathering blows for another's sake and not counting them. Love is loss of self, loss of other, and faith in the death of loss. Some righteous men and women yet held faith, but they were scattered so far that none could see the other's light, and it seemed the darkness had no end. How did heaven come into all of this? Heaven was life, not death. Heaven was a woman holding your head in the crook of her arm and looking down at you. Heaven was a warm hand on your cheek and the smell of soup with garlic on the fire. All right, so as I mentioned before, I've read other works by Buehlman, his other two most famous works being The Black Tongue Thief and The Daughter's War. Really, really love The Daughter's War, but I gave both of those books a 5 stars, and somehow Between Two Fires, like if those were 5 stars, this is like an 8 star. Like this is like leaps and bounds ahead of The Daughter's War, which I already thought was an excellent exploration of war, trauma. It's just he's such an amazing author. Christopher Buehlman really cuts to the heart of characters in a very memorable way. And this book, in my opinion, has his best characterization so far in his entire career. Well, granted, I've only read these 3 works, but compared to Daughter's War and Black Tongue Thief, I think the characters of Tomas and the girl and Père Mathieu, this story, if you're a fan of, let's say, The Last of Us, if you like following the story of Joel and Ellie as they try to make their way through this zombified world, if you like the story of God of War 2018, where you follow Kratos as he tries to guide his son Atreus through these different realms, if you're a fan of Logan, the Wolverine movie where he protects this girl through this sort of wasteland, Between Two Fires, we follow Tomas as he guides this young girl who has a sort of angelic power to her through Europe that is plagued by the Black Death. And it is not just the Black Death we know historically. It is demonically empowered. It is Satan's tool to destroy humanity and to cast the souls, both guilty and innocent, into hell. And this disgraced knight, Tomas of Picardy, is all that stands between this young girl and her sure demise at the hands of the demonic. There is crazy monster slaying. There's tons of disgusting, depraved, corpse-infested horrors found throughout. But at the end of the day, this is a story of redemption, of true heroism. It is a story of how to pick up the pieces of who you used to be when you've lost them. It is such an amazing story. And the redemption of Tomas of Picardy is not the only redemptive tale in here. The priest character that we follow, Père Mathieu, another amazing character. I really think this trio rounds out the whole story. There are other characters that we interact with throughout the tale, but it's really these 3 that, I mean, you can distill it down to Tomas and the girl, but I really think it shines the most when you have this whole trio interacting together. I think they bounce really well off of each other. In fact, one of my favorite scenes from this book, I'm going to go light spoilers here, it's very early on in the book, but when Père Mathieu shares a bottle with Tomas and asks him to kill this monster that's been infesting this lake and killing the people in this town, he's like, it could go a good way towards restoring your honor. And Tomas said, I would give all my honor just for another bottle of this. And he holds up the bottle. And Père Mathieu looks at him and he says, no, you wouldn't. And, oh man, that moment cut right to the heart of me. I don't know if it was the absolutely stellar performance that Christopher Buehlman put up on his YouTube channel. Insane amount of talent. Like, he rattles off hours at a time of this book with amazing character voices, sharp articulation of the dialogue, just the sharpest performance. He is a true performer. I think Christopher Buehlman is one of the best audiobook narrators in the business. I listened to his Black Tongue Thief narrated by him. And I definitely recommend buying the book because Buehlman was kind enough and giving enough to release that audio for free on his YouTube, which I listened to, but I also bought the Broken Binding edition and I bought this. So and there are a few chapters that are missing that I had to read physically, but the narration is divine, demonic and divine. It's so damn good. He really knows what he's doing. It is amazing. And I buddy read this with a friend of mine, Zach, who I go to nursing school with, and we both had a blast. I think it's both of our books of the year. I actually read this hot off the heels of Paradise Lost by John Milton. And I think I read it at the perfect time. I mean, it is such a beautiful tale. I think it will. I know for certain it'll be in my top 10 of the year. Currently, it's sitting at number 1. I have it over The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I have it over pretty much every book I've read so far this year, except for the 5th book in Wars of Light and Shadow. I would put on par. But in terms of picking my favorite book of the year, I would really prefer that to be either a standalone, a first book in the series, or like a last book in the series instead of an installment in a much larger narrative. When I think of my favorite book of the year, I'm trying to think of like specific stories. And there's other books that came really close to this. It by Stephen King is notorious for being a book I absolutely adored, but had one scene that really, really threw me off. And anyone who's familiar with that book knows what I'm talking about. But Between Two Fires, from beginning to end, from first page to last page, is divine. It is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. It is beautiful. Even if you're not a fan of medieval horror, I think it'll be a hard read for people who really are uncomfortable with those sorts of things. I do think the overall message is a lot more hopeful than what you would think for something like medieval horror. I think this has very timeless themes that really cut to the heart of what it means to be human, and it is without a doubt one of my favorite historical fantasy novels, one of my favorite medieval horror novels, one of my favorite horror novels, one of my favorite fantasy novels. This book packs a punch. It is absolutely amazing. The only book that I found kind of scratched the same itch, and it's not even really comparable, is Once Was Willem. Once Was Willem is another great medieval horror, but the tone and the themes are drastically different. But yeah, this was awesome. And anyway, thanks, guys. Let me know down in the comment section below if you also love Between Two Fires and what other books I should check out that are similar to this, and if I should check out the rest of Buehlman's work. And thanks, guys. Stay safe. Peace.